And we're back. The FCS Edge in the way you know and love. I'm Craig Haley of Stats Perform and theanalyst.com, along with Zach McKinnell of FCS Football Central on SI. The two of us have recorded podcasts separately during the offseason, but we're back together to co-host a weekly in-season pod, the FCS Edge. Zach, is it true during the offseason you were named commissioner of the FCS?
No, sadly not. I don't know if I could add that to all the things I do, man. It's been a busy off season, but I don't know, man. I don't know about you. It felt like this one went by faster than recent off seasons. Maybe it was just because just being so busy, but I'm glad to be back, man. I appreciate you having me back as your co-host and looking forward to a really exciting season.
Well, I mean, it flew by because we anticipate FCS football year round. You know, go from the championship game right into talking about the new season ahead. So you can find the FCS Edge on your favorite podcast platforms and on our YouTube channel. Search the FCS Edge. Plus, there's plenty of content to be found on theanalyst.com. This is sort of a big picture episode as we return. We're going to begin to set up the 49th season of the FCS, start to look at the road to Nashville already. And guess what? Brent Vigen, the head coach of national champion Montana State, is our special guest coming up. So it's kind of funny, Zach, you know, all the things that look forward to here in the new season, but there's one program that's not here that still sort of impacts the whole season outlook. What does North Dakota State's departure mean for the FCS?
I think so. It's kind of and I talked about this right when it happened. It's a little bit like bittersweet, right? It feels like this. It feels like we've, as media, we've kind of been preparing for this since what, like 2015, 26. Like it's just like even that far back, there were rumors and whispers, and so I think it's important I think it's an important time for the FCS because of this. I don't think. Obviously, losing a big brand hurts a little bit, right? Just the passion of the NDSU fans, losing a program that had the national recognition, the national brand of an NDSU. But I look back and the FCS continues to grow now, Greg. And that's including all, like, go back from the 90s, right? Marshall, Georgia Southern. I mean, you can keep James Madison. I mean, the list keeps going. Jacksonville State, Sam Houston. The FCS has continued to improve, and at the end of the day, someone is going to fill that void. And I think that's to me, that's what makes this season more exciting than maybe past ones. Is that there's going to be a new program, right? We have the Montana States, the South Dakota States, but even when you get to the programs that are known, that have that expectation, South Dakota, North Dakota, Youngstown, some of those other Valley teams, it's been a long time since Youngstown's been in the national picture. North Dakota, South Dakota don't have a history of winning here. Then you have programs like Tarleton and Abilene Christian and even Villanova, right, that have been trending upwards and have been investing at a high level and feel like they're ready to take the next step. Tennessee Tech is another one that recently has come on really strong. I'm excited to see how those fan bases embrace being now maybe in that next tier and who could take that next step and be maybe not the next dynasty, right? NDSU probably was special, but who could be the next top contenders and fill that top tier of teams at this subdivisions level?
Well, you're right. That nobody can replicate what the Bison did on 10 national titles in 14 years. That's just unheard of. But so with you listing all these schools, really strong program, do you feel there are more legitimate national title candidates this year than, say, if North Dakota State was here overlooking everybody?
Okay, so not yet, right? There's not many proven ones. I think even going into this year, right, and I'm sure this will kind of lead us into our next topic a little bit, it feels like everyone, that top three has felt like the consensus, and all three of those teams have competed for national championships, have won national championships, two of them very recently, obviously. And it feels like I'll say this, it's more exciting in terms of, I think there's more maybe semifinal, quarterfinal contenders than previous years, where for me, when I was putting together my top 25 as we've been previewing the season, it felt like it was those top three, but Craig, to be honest with you, like 4 to about 15, it's like you could really make an argument depending on what you weight in terms of, do you like a returning quarterback? Do you like returning offensive line? What about defense, head coach continuity? There's a lot of teams that could move up and challenge to be in that top tier. So I think there's more parity as like more teams in the subdivision feel like they have a chance. But again, like you look at Montana State, if they go back to back this year, Craig, and they're dominant, and so they somehow keep Vigen again, who will be our guest later in the show, it feels like they're building something that can be sustained. But what if South Dakota State breaks through? Maybe they're the next team we look at. So I think there's still that top tier that all these other teams are looking to break into. But I do feel like there's more parity, maybe from like 4 to about 20 in terms of like those top teams in the FCS.
Keep Vigen again. I mean, don't stir up the Bobcat fans. Come on. No,
Hey,
I know it's a great
he's
point.
popular. He's a popular coach. And I'm sure Bobcat fans would tell you they'd rather deal with the rumors of having an elite coach and have to be like, are we going to be able to keep him this year? Rather than have a bad coach that no one wants. It's always like a good thing to have a coach that everyone wants because it means he's winning.
Well, you mentioned three. I mean, the big three of Montana State, Montana, South Dakota State have been tremendous programs for a while now. I mean, that's the Missouri Valley Conference and the Big Sky Conference. Those two just keep meeting over and over in the championship game. Is the gap, has it closed at all? Is it bigger? How do these conferences close the gap on those two conferences?
Okay, so maybe this is more of like a controversial opinion. And I know me and Timothy on our site do our conference power ratings every year in terms of like who are really the best conferences in FCS. And like the UAC has slowly been closing the gap on the Big Sky. And I don't think it's an insult. I think Montana State have carried that banner well. And that's what separates them, right? When the Big Sky has two bona fide national title contenders every single season, it helps. But I think where the Big Sky has maybe lacked in previous years and it has maybe 5-10 years ago is that the middle part of that conference has not been as consistent. You're waiting for UC Davis to kind of have that breakthrough. They've been a quarterfinal team, but can they get to the next step? But then really behind them, Northern Arizona, inconsistent. Idaho, inconsistent. And Idaho State has had a lot of hype the past few years, but they haven't been able to break through. Eastern Washington has kind of fallen back to the middle of the pack. That's really closed the gap because you look at the UAC, Austin P trending up, Tarleton trending up, Abilene Christian trending up. And then you add a program like West Florida this offseason where we don't know what they're going to be right now. That feels like a team that's going to invest well enough to be a top 25 team. And even West Georgia last year, Craig, the newest addition, they were a top 25 team, 8-3 in the conversation nationally. So I think the UAC in terms of depth might be right there might be closer to the Big Sky than people think. I actually think the Valley is widening the gap right now. You look at what the Valley has coming back. Craig, if I made an argument for those top 6 teams to win the Valley this year, you'd probably be like, yeah, I could see it if that goes right. If Illinois State replaces Rittenhouse, if South Dakota State stays healthy, if South Dakota, North Dakota put it together, Southern Illinois with DJ Williams, the Valley's just so deep at the top that I think that kind of separates them from the rest of the FCS.
Yeah, and I do think the way the UAC has added the right programs. I mean, they've hit it right with West Georgia. It looks like they're going to hit it right with West Florida. You don't always get that in other conferences when a Division II program moves up. That has made that's just takes it to another level. And I agree, they've become the third best conference. I still feel there's a gap. I mean, having 8 teams versus say 11, 13, some of the bigger conferences, you may not have that really bottom dragging you down. But I just think that the elite teams in a conference really carry it. And then that would be the Big Sky and the Missouri Valley. But I mean, it's still, terrific for the FCS. In 2026, we have 128 schools. There's 13 conferences again. I mean, Chicago State's an NEC school, but they're playing an independent schedule in their inaugural season here. So they're not part of the NEC standings. Merrimack is still an independent. They need to get into a conference, but still 128 schools. It's going to be a fun year. A lot of good quarterbacks, like unbelievable how many are back. I mean, who stands out? And you can name a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it starts with Bo Brungard, right? I mean, returning Walter Payton winner, and I think has a real shot to potentially go back to back. I mean, in that offense, Craig, he's going to put up insane stats. His usage rate is just too high. And I guess the question there for them is they have a lot of new pieces at wide receiver. And, they relied so much on Tom Zach, and Flash Wilson was great last year. Do they have the pieces around him to support him? But that whole offensive line's back. Jaden Gilbert's back behind him. They're going to have pieces around him. I think the interesting thing kind of comes behind him, where you have a guy like Justin Lampson coming back, who's a national champion now. And I know it felt like he kind of got overlooked at the end of the year, Craig, with like postseason awards and stuff. But then in the playoffs, he took his game to the next level. A little bit of iffy game against Yale, but those last 3 games in the playoffs was just electric. I mean, his performance against Montana and Illinois State was absolutely amazing to watch. And then you have Ayat in Montana, who threw for over 4,000 yards. And then you have a Devin Farrell, who's kind of led Rhode Island to that next step and was, I believe, led the FCS in the regular season in passing yards. But then I think the group of dynamic quarterbacks that we have kind of behind that top 5, Craig, Chris Parson, DJ Williams, Chase Mason, Andrew Body, all those guys at any given week, Craig, is going to put up a ton of stats. You're going to have a bunch of highlights. And kind of the question is, can any of those guys maybe take the next step as just an overall passer? Because you look at them, it was Body's first year kind of staying fully healthy. Mason hasn't put a full season together as a starter. Parson was only a redshirt sophomore, Craig. So that was his kind of coming out party. And DJ Williams, obviously just coming off an injury a year prior, really put together his first full season. All those guys, I don't think, have reached their ceiling. And then that doesn't even get to the guys like Hayden Johnson, Craig. I mean, that are good, that kind of get overlooked. The Dante Reno's coming back at Yale, who just led Yale to the playoffs. I have not seen a collection of quarterbacks like this, Craig, in a long time in the FCS. And I'd still didn't even mention Todd Pennington, who I've heard from the scouting community might be the top FCS quarterback prospect coming out of the FCS.
Pat McQuaid, too, Villanova. I mean, that's to land him once again late in the summer. I mean, they were waiting all year, Villanova. And, I agree. I mean, we talked about it last year. The transfer portal doesn't really have that intimidating feel that it did, say, 3 years ago. It's like you felt like everybody was leaving. But just to hear all these names that they're staying, to see what a Montana State team did, that nucleus staying together, sort of like what North Dakota State did, and then South Dakota State really did it by keeping players together. That's very reminiscent of that. So I don't feel that the transfer portal is as intimidating, and you're going to get players back if you lose players.
Yeah, I think it was kind of always like that. It was just an adjustment for people, man. Like, people don't like change at the end of the day, and it's hard, and especially college football fans. I mean, Craig, you've covered the game longer than I have. It doesn't matter what level, right? P4, G6, FCS, everybody hates change. Everyone hated the college football playoff when it first came out. Everyone hated the BCS in the 90s. Everyone hates everything when it's new. And so I think the transfer portal just scared a lot of people because we really didn't know where it was going to go. But like you said, I think it's actually been, if you're asking an NFL draft perspective, maybe it's been a little bit of a net negative because those truly elite prospects are going to move up and they're going to get paid. And you see that, right? But I think we're seeing the NFL draft community kind of adjust, where you saw Incarnate Word claim a Cam Ward, and it's like that still counts because they developed him. And I think that might have eased the pain for a lot of fans because they're like, we don't get any credit for these players. Well, now that's not really true. And the other thing too is it's kind of a net positive because FCS coaches are so good at finding the diamonds in the rough, Craig, as they had to be. Whether it was high school, JUCO, Division II players transferring up, they have an eye for talent. And so what happens is those FBS drop downs that might be really talented, that didn't get a ton of snaps, that name the P4 school. Well, now guess what? Like, one of the top coaches in the FCS can bring him in and you develop him. Justin Lampson didn't get really a good shake at Stanford. Brent Vigen recruited him out of high school, goes and gets him from Stanford and says, man, well, come here and you're going to be our guy. And look at what he's developed into. Chris Parson was I believe the Gatorade State Player of the Year coming out of high school, goes to Mississippi State, kind of gets lost in the shuffle there, goes to Austin Peay, puts together an amazing year. We just have all these success stories of guys who just needed a change of scenery. And I think it speaks to the level of coaching we have in the FCS, but also fans just getting more comfortable. Right? They understand what now college football is going to be. And at the end of the day, we're getting good players, whether it's from a high school level, because it's gotten a lot harder for me to put together freshman All-American because there's so many freshmen coming in ready to play. And then how many D2 guys have come up, Craig, and we've seen become stars at the FCS level. I think that's also another pathway that you see fans exploring and understanding that these FCS schools are good enough and they're good enough recruiting to replace the talent that we eventually lose at the end of the season to the next level.
And because FBS level schools are so reliant on transfer classes now, the high school players that the FCS getting, it trickles down. You're getting a little bit better high school senior coming into your program than before the transfer portal took off. Just because there's not enough opportunities at the FBS level that as a freshman, you're going to FCS and learning how great a football level this is. And sometimes, yeah, you fall in love with the place and you do stay. And some are going to eventually transfer. But, I think the level of freshmen has improved, and I think coaches would agree to that. Well, our Stats Perform FCS preseason top 25 poll has been out. Kind of, might have gone the way we would have thought. I mean, you see it there on screen. I mean, Montana State with all 57 first place votes. Obviously, that's a slam dunk. But Montana, South Dakota State, we mentioned them. Illinois State, last year's runner-up, the first championship game to go to overtime. What a game, 35-34, the Bobcats. Tarleton State, UC Davis, you just go down. Those are programs that are now all starting to make deep runs. Since our ballots were fairly similar, I looked at them both, you and I wanted to point out some differences. You mentioned how 4 to 15 now, you can make a case many ways. I'm gonna pick out a couple here that were different. Tennessee Tech, you were very high on them. You had them 6th on your ballot. I was much farther down in the teens. I think it was 19. Tell us about Tennessee Tech. What really stands out in your eyes?
Yeah, this was more of a so for me, I really hate using last season's results as a strong indicator. I want to really look at transfer portal classes. I want to look at even continuity, right? Like who are you bringing back? And I think personally, Tennessee Tech had arguably the best transfer portal class of in the FCS, in my opinion. And on top of that, too, I think they actually do have a sneaky good core group of players returning from last season's team. And everyone just gets caught up in that North Dakota game, and that's fine, right? They have to prove that they belong here, and I get that. But at the same time, and that game was 10-6 going into the fourth quarter, Craig. It's not like they shouldn't even been on the field with them. And I'm just leaning on the fact that I trust Bobby Wilder and that staff. They've really been cutting edge with how they scout transfer portal players, bringing them in. And at the end of the day, talking to them and looking at this roster, they focused on the offensive line. And I think that was the biggest separator from them and some of these top elite teams. They did not have that Missouri Valley Big Sky level talent on the offensive line. And I think they went and got some guys that could play at that level. And as great as Kiko Avisperis was, and I'm not taking anything away from him, I think Richie Munoz is an upgrade at quarterback personally in terms of arm talent, in terms of even some athleticism and just being able to make some throws in the pocket. So I think the upgrade at quarterback, the upgrade on both lines of scrimmage, I think this team's going to be right there with the elite amount of teams. And at the end of the day, Craig, and I tell people this all the time, for voters, this is the poll you should take chances on. If you think a team's going to be good, put them in your ballot and put stamp on it, because then as we get into the season, if they end up not being good, you could just move them down and it all works itself out on the field. But you should, if you feel good about a team, you should be willing to bet on it going into the preseason. And Tennessee Tech's a team that, for me, I'm going to bet that they're a top 10 team again this year.
Great point. And we look at the top 25 preseason poll as a projection, as you mentioned. You're projecting how they're going to be this year. You're not looking backwards. You're looking almost at the end of the season. Number 1 should be your national champion. Number 2 should be who you feel is on your ballot is going to be the runner-up in that championship game. So it is a projection, and it's fun to find teams that you're really high on. I was really high on Illinois State at 4. You had them a little farther down. I think you had them at 12. I think they'll, everybody's focused on the quarterback. Pellant returning, Beckham Pellant and Gage Roy is in from USC as a transfer. I think they'll settle in there. I'm highly impressed with Victor Dawson. I mean, he set the world on fire in the playoffs last year, just 100-yard games after another. Ty Niekamp, I mean, it doesn't get any better than him. He's a two-time All-American at linebacker. That's the one that I'm very high on. Now, you
No,
mentioned,
yeah.
again,
No, I think that's fair. I'll say this: I had him at 12, Craig, more as like a prove it vote. Because listen, if you're the 12th team in the country, you're still going to be pretty good. I don't even think quarterback's the biggest loss. I think it's Daniel Sofkowitz, like how much he did at wide receiver. And yes, they have Lord and Marylander; those
yeah.
are more slot guys. They don't. I don't know if they have that guy on the outside that's 6'2" that could just go win one-on-one matchups. And also too, Craig, if people forget, they were one of the last teams into the playoffs too. So it was more of a, was that run really who you are, or was that just a special run that we're not going to see again? So it's kind of 12 was kind of like a placeholder. Let's prove that playoff one, was really you guys moving forward.
Well, we know they can win on the road, so they've got
Yes.
that solved. All right, so let's pick one here. The one that I know is you talked about having fun with the team, and we kind of did both at number 24. I went with Idaho State. You went with Furman. Tell us about Furman.
Yeah, I'm bullish on Furman. I personally, I think they're going to be number 2 in the SoCon. I have them number 2 in the SoCon, right behind Tennessee Tech. I think Mercer lost a lot, and it's more of a, I trust Joel Taylor, but I think it might be a year before that team's ready to be back at the top of the SoCon. And I look at Furman. I think they upgraded at quarterback. They brought in a very proven kid in Connor Ackerley from the Division II level. You bring in Jake Garcia, who actually started 2 years ago at East Carolina before he spent a year in Michigan. And Craig, you look at that defense. Joshua Stone King, and they bring in Joshua Tarver from Yale as well in that back end. They have a lot of pieces returning defensively. They got a stud from D2, Eli Lipscomb at edge. I think that defense takes a step forward. They upgraded quarterback. And it's funny, you mentioned Idaho State. Craig, that spot came down to Idaho State and Furman. They were going to be like my stretch team. And the reason I picked Furman over Idaho State, and this might be unfair to Cody Hawkins, but I said I'm going with the team that's proven they could be a top 25 team. And Furman has made playoff runs under Clay Hendricks. They've won conference titles under Clay Hendricks. And I'm going to bet that Clay Hendricks can get Furman back. And so for Idaho State was at 26 for me. If you extended my ballot, they're just a team that I got to see it on the field. They're super talented. I'm with you. Probably with everything you're going to say. It's just a prove it thing for me that you have to show that you deserve to belong, that you belong in this top 25.
Well, Idaho State certainly has to prove it because they haven't been to the playoffs since 1983. I'm
Gosh.
saying that they get it done. I think they're the fourth best team in the Big Sky, after the two Montana schools and UC Davis. They just have a lot back on offense. I mean, Jordan Cook, at quarterback, Dayson Brooks. I mean, he's fabulous. And to get Shedden James back on the perimeter and some other weapons for Jordan Cook, I just think, yeah, they're going to get it done. Cody Hawkins, you mentioned, he has done a great job there. I mean, he had a great mentor in learning from his dad, and he knows the Big Sky inside and out. Obviously, the schedule is always tough in the Big Sky, but I just think they get enough done, and maybe even get an FBS win to pad that resume. I just think this is the year Idaho State takes that next step. Now we have Coach Vigen coming on in a few minutes. Let's just talk Montana State for a second. I mean, this team is so loaded. I mean, all the players, as we mentioned, stayed together more or less. The nucleus coming back. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with a team this talented? Anything?
I mean, injuries obviously I think are the biggest thing that come to mind. Like what happens if Lampson goes down because they're really not proven a quarterback behind him. And I think they do have some I don't think they're without question marks, right? They have so much though that we kind of overlook a few of the question marks, but they have to replace pretty much all their starting corners from last year's team who were really good, like freshmen all the American level. I think one's playing at Indiana, and the other one transferred up to, I believe, one of the Pac-12 or Big 12 schools as well. So they had elite guys on the outside. And so what's the cornerback spot going to look like? Now, the reason I overlooked that, Craig, is they might have the best safety room that I can remember in the FCS with some of the guys they have come back at safety, led by Caden Dowler, Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year last year. But also, what about those defensive tackles, Craig? I mean, you look at the guys they lost on the interior. Paul Brott,
Yeah,
invaluable
a
last year.
long
Alec
time.
Eckert really came on strong last year. Are those younger guys that played those rotational snaps for them last year, are they ready to step into superstar? You really got to be a star and take up some room. Now, they lost their edge too. But I don't know about you. Like, if I had to pick a guy who's a real dark horse for like the Buck Buchanan, Zach Cruz, I think is going to be just a freak for them off the edge. I understand what Greeby and those guys have done in recent years for them. I think Cruz is probably the most physically, like, he looks better physically. He has the length and he has the frame that you would expect from an edge rusher. All those other guys were just tad bit undersized. I think Cruz is due for a really big year. And their linebacking core, Craig, is just, I mean, we could have a whole top 25 list of just Montana State linebackers that are good. And so they just had, I think what happens is they're so talented everywhere outside of those two positions that we just really, outside of injuries, and even if those spots are just good, not elite, they have enough talent around that they're going to elevate those rooms, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, we're about to have them on. Brent Vigen is kind of the X factor for me. I don't know about you. When I'm voting teams in like my top 25, doing preseason projections, I'll overlook a handful of key question marks if I trust your head coach in that position. And I think that counts for something. Like Yale in my top 25 might have been a little bit higher than some people, but Kevin Cahill, I mean, is there anything you could say about him, Craig? I mean, he's such a great coach, and there's a few other teams like that too. You mentioned Villanova. Even if McQuaid wasn't coming back, Villanova's probably still going to be really good because we can trust like Mark Ferrante has done it for longer than I've been covering FCS football. So I think you've got to give a benefit of the doubt to a few of the coaches, and Vigen's one of those.
Well, I think Coach Brent Vigen of Montana State is going to he's going to enjoy that scouting report you just gave of the Bobcats. So let's welcome him in. Coach Vigen, we thank you for joining Zach and I today. Coach, inquiring minds want to know, Taco Dowler, your team's All-America wide receiver and returner, have you tried his taco seasoning blend?
Unfortunately, I haven't. I've heard it's a really good version of taco seasoning, though. I know my sons have tried it out, so I have to. For whatever reason, we just haven't at this point.
You'll do it on Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's easy for a national championship team to quickly put the focus on what's next. But how have you taken time to enjoy your accomplishments this offseason?
Yeah, that's a great question because, I think the game was on the 5th. Your immediate attention turns to retaining players. We have a meeting. Our first meeting with the 26 team is on January 14th. And, that was the focus. We got to move forward. Now, in saying that, I did tell the guys, hey, there's going to be some really neat opportunities to celebrate last year's success, and immediately that for us was a parade and a celebration here in Bozeman that far exceeded our expectations. A trip to Helena to go to the Capitol and see our governor, getting our rings at the spring game in April, and then ultimately going to D.C. and getting a chance to go to the White House and the Capitol just a few weeks ago. So I think those moments have been great. Having those seniors back on those occasions. We didn't have a big senior class, but a bunch of those guys are still here in Bozeman. I think is allowed for that. But for the most part, you are trying to shift gears and definitely learn from the past and how we did what we did, but not, be to the point where that's going to guarantee us success this year. So this group's done a good job of really moving forward and attacking, a new process.
Coach, I know me and you spoke earlier this off season. I guess as we get into fall camp, we talked a little bit about your defensive tackle, cornerbacks. Going to be a lot of new faces in those rooms with some new starters. Who has kind of emerged as the leaders of those two positions that are so integral to y'all's defensive success over the past few seasons?
Yeah, I start with the D line. We played 8-9 guys last year. We graduated 4, and those guys were the guys out there starting the games for us. But I think we really saw, an additional 3 or 4 guys really as full-time rotators, starters. So, interior wise for us, that's Talon Marsh and Zach Black. On the edges, that's Zach Cruz, Dom Solano. A young player on the interior, Josiah Swega, is one that we really think has a bright future. He's just going to be a second-year guy. We played him just a little bit last year, but really excited about the impact he can make. And at the cornerback position, Takari Carr is the one of the 4 guys we played who does return. Um, we've added a couple guys uh, through the transfer portal. One being Gianni Edwards out of Arizona back in January, and then Alec Wills out of Penn later in the spring. So, what those guys' impact can be is going to be felt. Corey Boyd was a player that was our fifth guy last year. Didn't play a lot. That we need something out of. And then there's some second-year guys and true freshmen in the mix. So I think we have the talent. I guess that's the bottom line. Takari has to be that leader, the guy that's been out there. He's done it. He's been a part of a lot of success. He's been in a rotation. So it's still playing out quite frankly. 5-6 guys in the mix, and ultimately whether we play 3 or 4 or even 5 in a game, I think is yet to be determined.
Coach, you mentioned some of these, players in key roles on defense. On offense, Justin Lamps and Adam Jones. Both Dowlers back, and then Titan Fleischman. Can you, in this day and age of college football, can you talk about this group, the steps that occurred for the nucleus to stay together and not, take FBS offers?
Yeah, I guess I referenced right after the game, but it was a process that I think I was more proactive going back to probably November. Just talking through what we could do for them. Just wanting to be as transparent as possible. All the way, until you're having conversations, even leading up to the game in Nashville, and then those days that followed. The portal was open through that stretch, and I think just trying to get those guys to see as big a picture as possible. We have several Montana natives in that group of really good players to great players that stayed. And I think, they understand their legacy and their future of staying here. That's bigger than maybe what they could get in one year. And I think for a guy like Justin, who's not from here, but really identified with his opportunity here and I think it was everything that he had hoped for. I think that mattered a lot to him, even though there were some guys really, some other programs really tugging at him. So I think it's just trying to be as proactive, not trying to run away from those conversations. I do think that helped this year. And I think it helped that this group was as tightly knit as possible. And we did accomplish what we accomplished. And then I think for many of them, I think the thought of being able to do it again was, that's a hard thing to put a price tag on. And in this day and age, there is a price tag, but there's a lot of things that really matter to our guys. And I think that those things, which is a long list, I think outweigh just the pure dollars and cents of it all.
Coach, we hear from head coaches all the time that the best teams are player led, and I think Taco came out at Big Sky Media Day and said that there's a bunch of players deleting social media for ahead of the season. They said we don't want to see the good nor the bad that's said about teammates, this team. We're just going to be focused on going back to back. Was that like a team talk, or was that more of like a player led decision that we're just going to get in the lab and work on getting back to Nashville?
Yeah, that's ultimately something that they came to as far as the decision. I think, we've worked hard on this group of taking a bunch of, I think, good leaders and trying to make them great and recognizing the missing pieces of what last year's leadership group was and really trying to hone in on this year's group. So we've worked hard at it, but I think the choices that they've made within it are derived from their thoughts. I think things that they feel like would distract. I mean, sometimes their ability to recognize distractions versus what I would see as a distraction are maybe two different things. So, I think they want to model the type of behavior and competitive desire and connection that we want as a team, and they understand that they really have to work at that. And we've been really diligent over the years, probably more and more each year at putting this team together and building that connection. And, I really appreciate this group craving and wanting more knowledge, more ways to get that done. And, we got a long ways to go yet, but I really, think we've come a long ways with this group of leaders, going back to January.
Well, with that in mind, I mean, your team, Montana State, is kind of going through something you went through at North Dakota State. I mean, with all this talent back, being number one, it's almost like there's a pressure of a repeat is really the only outcome that people want to see. How do you deal with that kind of pressure?
Well, I think you embrace it, I guess. I understand it's a privilege. We much rather be picked first because we did what we did than otherwise. I think, just acknowledge that piece. And then, I think what's in front of us is going to be the challenge. It's when you don't quite play as well as you think you should, but can you still find a way? And then how do you bounce back? I think to this point, when there's been no score kept, I think it's being really critical of all the steps and making sure, whether it's winter conditioning, spring ball, summer, that we're doing all the things we need to do. Don't let anything slip. Fall camp now, same thing. But when we do start keeping score and things don't go our way, how do we respond in those scenarios? If we happen to lose a game, what do we do then? And having been through it, we won 3 consecutive at national championships at NDSU my last 3 years there. And I know that second year we lost a game we shouldn't have. And I think our ability to refocus, it's almost like we maybe needed that. So point being, things are going to happen, and it's going to be how we deal with them. How do we move forward? That is really the mark of this team, and it's going to be the process, the journey, and how we, live in the moment each and every day that gets us where we ultimately want to go. It is not just snapping our fingers and being there at the end. It's a lot of hard work. If, things need to go your way, you need to have some good fortune. You need to have a group that stays together. And that's, really what our intention is right now.
Offensive line has been a massive part of the run you guys have had over these past few seasons and the dominance you guys have shown in the FCS. Talk a little bit about the growth and development of that offensive line. We have a nice core group of guys coming back that were starters last year, but there's a lot of young guys that fans and media are kind of excited to see maybe step into bigger roles. How do you feel about the offensive line right now as we sit in fall camp?
Yeah, still making progress. Each and every year we've been able to bring a few guys back, insert a few guys, and ultimately, as the season goes along, I think put an offensive line together worthy of playing at the level we need to. So right now, you return, a guy like Titan Fleischman, that's huge. We're probably going to play him back at tackle like he did 2 years ago. We return Burke Mastel, who had a really good year last year. I think he was in the shadow of some of the other guys maybe a little bit, but was a really consistent, solid player at the left guard position. And then Braden Zimmer, the performance he had as a freshman, is, I don't want to say it's unmatched here. We've had some other good second-year guys. You think about Connor Moore a few years back, but Braden really came into his own and had a heck of a freshman campaign, and so he's got a chance to make a big jump. So saying that, we got to replace a few guys. Aiden Kaplan at center has really done a good job. He was not handed it by any means, but he was given every opportunity in the spring to make a jump, and he did. And I think he's continued to do that. I would say we still have a battle at the right guard position. Everett Carr, who started our first couple games last year, he's a junior, 4th-year guy, and then Dylan Rollins is another essentially junior eligibility-wise. That they're kind of battling back and forth, and ultimately whether we play 5 or 6, we've had a couple of years where we've played 6 and we've rotated. I think we're maybe heading that direction, but I think the group is coming together, and we got some young players beyond those 6 that you just never know, and that's been the good thing about our offensive line. We've lost guys every year. We've had some unfortunate injuries early. We've been able to recover. We've been able to put a really good unit out there, and ultimately one that continues to get to where we want to by the end of the year.
Coach, there's been that talk for years now of the upper tier of the FBS breaking off, and the group of 5 and now group of 6 kind of combining with the elite FCS conferences and programs. Do you expect that to still happen?
I don't know. Day by day, you just don't know what to even believe. I think you control what you control. I think it makes a lot of sense when the TV contracts come up here that something's going to give. Something has to give, I guess. And the more with college athletics and college football, the more things are talked about, the more they probably are going to become reality. It seems like it's being talked about more and more that there will be this breakaway. And what exactly that looks like, I don't know. I just know here at Montana State, we have to be positioned to play at the highest level we can. And I think there is a world where that could look a little different a few years down the road. So I do feel like that's our mindset right now. I know we don't control much of any of it other than what we do. And I do feel like we have a forward-thinking administration here. I think our continued success is a product of that. And again, we want to continue to build this program and compete at the highest level we can. So I would say something's going to happen, but how and when and who and all that kind of stuff, I'll leave that for someone else to determine.
Coach, my last question before I toss it back to Craig for his is just, we talked earlier in February and you said that you felt like Justin Lamson, what a great year he had, but you said he still had a lot of room to grow. This was his first full offseason with the program after missing spring and summer last year. Has he taken that jump? And how do you feel about Justin and his potential going into his second season as a starter with a full offseason behind him now?
Well, it'll ultimately play out on Saturdays, and I know we got a Friday in there, but I think he's put the work in, and it was evident in spring that he had taken a step. I think accuracy, anticipation, ability to push the ball down the field. I think there was definitely steps taken. I think certainly mastering our offense was a work in progress last year. Just so much so to say, I don't think he had mastered it. So I think he's definitely taken some steps there, and ultimately as a leader, I think Justin didn't take anything for granted last year. He just went and worked. So he was set out to be the quarterback first and foremost, and I think have the leadership take on from that, as opposed to I'm going to just step in and I'm expected to do this. I'm going to be the leader. So I think this offseason he's done a really good job of taking a step there. All that being said, I think he completed about 71% of his passes. So how is that going to look different? I think again, it's, maybe he is pushing the ball down the field more consistently. I think he did a really good job of that late in the season. Running wise, he was very effective. Now, can that look a little different? Can we take some steam off of some of that? I think that's a piece to it too. So really excited about him taking a jump, I guess, bottom line. And I definitely think he's worked real hard to do that.
Last one for me, Coach. You had that epic playoff meeting, first meeting ever with Montana in the playoffs. I mean, you're coming in, Montana State's number 1, Montana's number 2 in the preseason poll. But in this intense rivalry that you have, is there any friendship or camaraderie between the coaches or the players?
Well, I'll start with the players. I think by nature, there's teammates, high school teammates on both sides. And I think those guys get a chance to either grow up together, compete with one another, compete against one another in some cases, certainly at the high school level. I just look at the Montana guys on each side of it. So there's definitely, friendships, respect that are abound there. I would say more than people think. On the coaching staff, I think it just depends. Coaches and who they overlap with, I think it can be a lot of different things based on where you've been, who you've been around. And, that I think creates this level of respect and I guess camaraderie that you have. I know as head coaches in our league, we get a chance to spend time together on a couple different occasions. So Coach Houck and I had spent time together over the years, and I think there's a mutual respect for how we went about our business. I know with Coach Kennedy now over there, that's relatively new. But again, I think a respect for all the efforts they make, and I think bottom line is our rivalry makes us each better, and I think there's an appreciation for that. And I think in this day and age, with some of these rivalries going away across the country, you're talking same state, same conference, 1 and 2 in the country. That's something to appreciate. And, I know they push us on a daily basis, and, we certainly look forward to that opportunity in November to see them again here in Bozeman.
Well, Coach Brent Vigen, we really enjoyed spending time with you today. I mean, you're the defending national champions, Big Sky champions. We look forward to watching your team develop throughout the year, and we just really enjoy getting insight into your program. Zach and I are going to take a quick break here from the FCS Edge, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up the episode. Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Surely Zach is a bit young for the theme song for Welcome Back, Cotter. You may be currently thinking, what is Craig talking about? Welcome back. Yeah, there's reason to be happy. I mean, welcome back to the FCS Edge. Welcome back to the FCS season. Zach, we just had a terrific interview with Coach Vigen of defending national champion Montana State. After talking to him, are you even more confident in the Bobcats than, say, 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I spoke about before the interview how confident I just was as a head coach. As long as he's at Montana State, they're going to be a massive factor in terms of how the FCS season plays out. And I look back at what he's done with that program and the nucleus that he's built in the building, man, where the guys just you see guys leave, Craig, and then the next group of stars are ready to step in. And I talked to him earlier this offseason about this too. Is just that I really do think that experience he had from NDSU and working under some great head coaches that have been his mentors, you could see how that shaped him to be such a great head coach. And I mean, he has this thing rolling at Montana State right now. And I just like we talked about earlier, what is going to stop them from getting back to Nashville? I really don't know outside of a handful of external things that can keep them from getting back.
Well, that's the fun part here of the FCS season. There's a bunch of other programs out there that are just as confident in themselves, and they're going to take aim on, conference titles, the FCS title on Montana State to be number one. So I just think it's a fun year ahead. We have a couple more weeks of the FCS Edge to preview what's coming up, and then we go into the weekly look at what's happening on the field and off the field. I know you're looking forward to it. I mean, tell us, do you have 2 more weeks of relaxing, or are you full steam ahead with FCS?
Man, I think, on our platform, me and Timothy took about a week off, Craig. We left Nashville. We said we're taking a week off. I mean, we've been doing episodes just about every week. We've been doing articles. So no off season for us, man. I always joke that, I don't believe in the off season. As soon as the clock hits 0 in Nashville, we're already moving on to the next year. So no relaxing here. I got a few trips planned early in the season, going down to West Florida's inaugural FCS game over in Pensacola. So excited for that. Then actually be at Tarleton and PV on that first week 0 Saturday night. Excited to see that one. Tremaine Jackson, what an amazing job year 1 at PV that he's done. And obviously Tarleton, top 5 team in the preseason poll. Really, really, I think that's one of the bigger FCS versus FCS out of conference matchups of the early season slate. And I'm excited to see it.
Well, we're all going to try and keep up with you, but that's kind of impossible. So we thank all our listeners and viewers here for the FCS Edge. As I mentioned, we will be back next week as we roll along here with the weekly podcast. Thank you for joining. This is the FCS Edge.